Trish Dolman, our guest. She is a director, a writer, producer. A 10-year project has been released called Eco-Pirate, the story of Paul Watson. And so many of us here have met Paul and had the pleasure over the years of talking to him. And he's formidable, as you know. You can't get him off the subject. and he does not care about people who revile him, think he's a terrorist, eco-terrorist. He just doesn't care. This idea, so many of the young Greenpeacers said, you know, we had this idea that we're kind of like Moby Dick going out to save a whale or two, but it's so not like that. The reality of how they killed the whales, the Russians, exploding harpoons, and is that what they are?
Yeah, it was incredibly dangerous, you know, what they were doing and what people continue to do, which is to drive these Zodiacs in front of the harpoons. I mean, that was the method that they found on those early Greenpeace campaigns, and both Greenpeace and Paul Watson still use that tactic today, which is to drive a Zodiac between the whale and the harpoon. And yeah, a harpoon is, you know, in the film, a friend of Paul's describes it as an exploding bomb. It actually goes into the whale and then explodes.
Yes,
to
and
kill
they
it.
kill the whole pod, right?
Well,
one of the female first. What's the method?
What they discovered on that first anti-whaling campaign was that the Russians would kill a young female. Because what they knew about whale behavior or had discovered is that the rest of the pod of whales would rush to try to save that whale. And then they could just gun them down point blank because the whales would come right to the ship. So it's pretty horrifying. I imagine, you know, being on that campaign, that first campaign was just horrifying to see that kind of slaughter.
Sure, grotesque. And then the Russians weren't killing the whales for food, were they?
Well, at the time, whales were being harvested for a variety of things, but they were specifically killing sperm whales. And sperm whales were harvested primarily for spermaceti oil, which is used as a lubricant for things like ballistic missiles. And and we used to use whale oil actually a lot before the advent of gasoline and oil and electricity. So whale oil was used to, you know, for lanterns, for a variety of things.
Did you feel anger rising up in yourself as you watched this and saw so much archival footage and the inhumanity of man to man, but man to animal?
Yeah, you know, for me, I think what I've really learned over the years doing this film and studying different aspects of environmentalism is that sort of uncurbed, humans will just sort of devour everything. We'll use up every resource available to us. So we will fish out species, cod, salmon, if we don't have laws or people trying to stop us.
Trees in the forest, doesn't matter.
You know, and I've watched how communities are pitted against each other, or people like Paul are pitted against sealers, you know, loggers are pitted against environmentalists. And then I've watched in my lifetime those arguments come around. As in BC, the forest industry radically has changed. Nobody has jobs anymore. So suddenly you find those two people, two groups on the same side of the argument.
Yeah, there is a middle. We are hewers of wood, and there is a way to harvest wood and replant and grow more trees.
Exactly.
And you don't have to cut the oldest tree in the forest down. You don't.
Well, and I think the same about fish. You know, we have to be careful. Salmon are an incredibly precious resource. We need salmon to keep coming back. And I also learned that, you know, with the moratorium on whaling, the whale population has really been able to rebound globally. I was kayaking off the west coast of Vancouver Island in the Broken Islands last summer with my family, and we saw humpback whales every day.
Really?
And my husband was convinced that they weren't humpback whales because he's been going to the Broken Islands, you know, over his whole life. He said, no, we only see gray whales here. And I was like, no, those are humpbacks. I've been looking at a lot of whales. I've been doing a lot of whale identification, and those are humpbacks. And we came back and, you know, we looked online at the different whale ID stuff, and he said, yeah, you know, you're right. And the humpback population, for example, has been really able to rebound because of that moratorium, because of the work of people like Paul. And
the knowledge that whales are such intelligent creatures. And Paul Watson experienced that firsthand. A whale essentially saved his life, a dying whale. Tell me that story.
Yeah, it's a story Paul tells often, and so I really wanted to get parts of that story that he hadn't told before. But on that first Greenpeace anti-whaling campaign, they drove their Zodiac between the Russian whaling ship and a whale. And the Russians fired a harpoon that went right over their heads, and it killed this whale anyhow. But as it was dying, it rose up in the water. And Paul tells the story that he looked into the eye of this whale, and he felt that he saw understanding, that the whale could have fallen on him, but instead it went back into the water. And it's become this very iconic story in his life. And, you know, Rex Weiler and other people talk about how that really changed Paul's life, that changed the trajectory of his life. And it was in that moment that he really committed to the oceans, to defending the oceans, because I don't think he knew what he wanted to do until then. So yeah, that whale, it was, you know, sperm whales are huge. If it had fallen on their Zodiac, of course.
Or attacked them.
Or attacked them, yeah.
The whale was dying, but not dead, and could have eaten them for lunch.
Sure.
When you think of the luck of those boys, I'm telling you, it's amazing. And back to the seal hunt, too. Remember when they trotted Bridget Bardot out to the Canadian seal hunt? And there was that conflict, as always, the workers. We're just trying to make a living here, son.
Yeah, I mean, that is the essence of the seal hunt conflict in Canada. I think on the one hand, you've got fisher people who are saying, look, we have the right to do this. Seal populations are no longer endangered. Whereas when the Greenpeacers started out, you know, there was less than 3 million seals left in that herd, down from 30 to 40 million. Well, now I think it's up around 10 to 12 million. So really it's an animal rights issue. Do you think this is something that should be happening? Should seals be being shot or clubbed to death? So, but yeah, they were savvy even then. You know, it was sort of really one of the first uses of a movie star to draw attention to a cause, which is commonplace now.
Sure, and they're good at getting the media's attention, as you know, because you have what? Sex, scandal, violence, celebrity. Pretty much the media will pay attention.
Yeah, Paul and Bob Hunter really figured that out. How, if you want to create a story, what are all the elements you need? And Paul talks about that in the film.
Yeah, very much so. He's really, as somebody said, probably Patrick Moore, the pit bull terrier of the eco movement. His personal life, he has one daughter. And she says very clearly, she really only saw him 3-4 times a year. And yes, they're blood related, and she loves him and he loves her, but the sacrifices Watson has made.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to reveal that when you have such single-minded dedication to your cause like Paul does, he really will choose that over anything, everything else. You know, he's been married 3 times. You know, his daughter talks about the fact that he wasn't around. They're very close now, and I think they've really mended that relationship. And Paul really cares for his daughter deeply. But you know, he was off on campaign most of her life when she was a child. So there are personal consequences. I don't think Paul sees it that way, because he's just doing what he does, and that's how it is. It's his way or the highway.
Single-minded, and I'm sure not every female, but many females think one day he'll come home to me. Not that man.
Yeah, that's a mistake, I think, if you think Paul's going to come off the oceans and be a good husband and stay at home. I don't think it's
I don't think that will happen. I'll make you a bet on that if you want, but I think that's probably so.
I think we'll be on the same side of that bet.
Exactly, but as he points out clearly, when people are flouting the law and the governments are doing nothing about it, you need vigilantes.
Yeah, it really struck me actually being in the Galapagos Islands. You know, the Galapagos Islands are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I spent 6 weeks on the boat there, and we were patrolling on the Farley Mowat, the ship, around the northern islands. And we found 4 ships fishing illegally inside of park waters, and that was just within a few weeks. There was a star-kissed tuna boat that had drifted inside park boundaries. And countries like Ecuador just don't have the resources to patrol. I definitely got the sense that the oceans are so vast that they're just a lawless place. There's really no enforcement of legislation on the seas. And I sort of had naively thought that everyone just sort of follows the rules out there, but really you can do whatever you want on the oceans and no one is going to know the better.
And even if they know it's happening, as you say, they don't have the resources to stop it.
So Paul and Sea Shepherd have actually been asked by a number of countries to enforce their laws in their marine parks. So, you know, they donated a ship to the Galapagos. They're helping numerous other small nations to try and protect their marine resources.
Yes, because there's more tourists in the Galapagos now, there's more people in the Galapagos now, more greed.
Well, and there's more people moving from the mainland because they know, you know, the Galapagos is actually incredibly rich in there's hammerhead sharks, and I got to snorkel with hammerhead sharks and whale shark. It was incredible, but you see just the volume of marine life is very high. But so that's also drawn fishermen because they know they can catch sea cucumbers, all these other things.
And not just catch what they're trying to catch.
Catch anything.
Catch anything that wiggles.
Yeah, long lining is indiscriminate. It really, you'll see sea turtles and dolphins and all different kinds of sea life caught up in long lines.
Eco Pirate, the story of Paul Watson. What an experience for you. What's next?
Well, I just had a baby, so I'm taking a break. I can't exactly go on Paul's ships right now. So, but I continue to produce a number of films. I'm in post-production on a feature film right now.
Is he pleased with it?
Yeah, Paul was complimentary. He said, it's a very well-made film. I think it's hard for him to see the personal stuff. He said it's hard for me to be objective about something so personal, and I think there's a few things that other people say about him that hurt a little. But in general, he's been very supportive of the film. Yeah.
Nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Trish Dolman, Eco Pirate, showing at Fifth Avenue Cinemas on Friday.